fungal infection is an old concept, and we reviewed the history of it and so on. But then toward the end, he tried to differentiate between that concept and Rosenow's specific work, which was basically the fulfilling of Koch's postulates, and put in this this detailed table. And I'm looking at the table, and I had very recently before that, I had looked at Rosenow's 1915 article, which is in another one of these books, by permission with the Journal of American Medical Association. And I'm looking at, and I was familiar with that because Rosenow just gave the total numbers. It's the same thing. Rosenow gave that 103 number and 60%. So I had multiplied through it, and I kind of was familiar, okay, this is what he did, and so on and so forth. And I was in numbers. I mean, I worked as a program analyst for State Department and for the Office of Economic Opportunity, and so part of my job was you look at numbers and you can see if something's wrong with the table. And so I'm looking at Holman's table in Rosenow, and he says Rosenow it's a rearrangement of Rosenow, reassessment of Rosenow's numbers. It's not the same numbers. Something was wrong. So I worked through it to try to figure out how did these things jive. And this table 1 shows the last 2 columns only were in Holman's book. Nothing besides that last 2 columns. Everything, and Rosenow only had the first 2 columns, the numbers and the percentages by disease. Holman also had numbers and percentages, but it was a total, it was nothing there. Okay, so that's how I found Holman, and I've been sitting on this stuff for a while, and it feels good to get it out, and I've been trying, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Weiner for the invitation to come here, and Dr. Reinecker to second that motion. I'm gonna, I guess I'll just take about 5 minutes and just give you a quick rundown of where I'm at on the project, and I've still got more information I'm going to try to get out, but based on primarily Dr. Meinig's urging and Dr. Husser's and others, we're getting some things available. I put Dr. Meinig specifically wanted me to get something out of the fraud because he thought that was real important, and so we do have some I call flash report, and some I've adopted this new logo here for the series of books. And we're trying to keep this reasonable so we can get it into the hands of people, and hopefully if I get some volume, I'll be able to get the prices down and not take a beating on it. But we'll try to get that available, and it is available. All these books I've registered on Amazon.com, so the books will be available through Amazon.com, hopefully within a week, but there will be a wait because of the special order books. They take a little time, but I will endeavor to get them to them as soon as possible. So while they say there might be a 4-week wait, as soon as I'm notified that they have an order, I will try to fill them as soon as possible. I have a question, please. Right. I just wanted you to know that I brought a bunch of the fraud books with me because I'm having a book signing, and we're going to try to get some PR on this. I think this thing is going to explode, and it should explode. People need to know the facts, and I'm a little afraid of it. I was thought about wearing a disguise, but we're going to let it go. So this we've gotten down. Now I hope at some point to either make the larger books better or to make them bigger, but compared to medical books, they're still fairly reasonably priced, and if I can just tell you what they are so you will know. E.C. Rosenow and Associates, a reference manual, is currently priced at $75, and this is, I've changed the name from Rosenow Reference Manual at the request of the Rosenow family. They have also gotten in touch with me, having heard of my work, and we'll see what happens with that. Edward C. Rosenow III was just chosen to be Mayo Clinic's alumnus of the year. He's worked in cardiology. The Rosenows are new to Edward C. Rosenow. They know about Edward C. Rosenow. They've heard all the stories, but they're just getting on board as far as getting on board as far as pushing his work. But they're moving in that direction. And I've talked to Rosenow, the EC, as they call him. And I've also talked to Dean Clarence Williamson, who was the last one that made Rosenow's vaccines, and Karsten Rosenow, who was a cousin, who is also a bacteriologist, who is trying to read in on Rosenow's work. Okay, so this is, the Rosenow book has all of Rosenow's articles indexed by disease and by subject. We have excerpts, the things that I felt were important. I have those also indexed by disease and subject. A section on polymorphism with all of the references, the background reading material that I thought was of value, that put Rosenow on the path to where he was going. And it's interesting, Linus Pauling comes in very prominently in some of this work as far as the development of antibodies. Okay, and also some of the critical work of Dr. Rosenow's supporters and associates, Frank Billings, Charles Mayo, and then some of the other very detailed statistical bacteriological studies that were done that prove Rosenow's work beyond all doubt. The autohemotherapy reference manual, I got involved with this whole project. Someone told me about this concept of re-injecting blood as a therapeutic measure, re-injecting blood intramuscularly. And at the time I was involved with a science project, which I hope to get back to, which also relates to your work, but in a much more technical sense. And I said to my friend Bert, don't bother me, I'm not into voodoo. But he was very insistent, and he said his father had used this type of procedure in the Philippines. And this is separate from Rosenow, but this is how I got to Rosenow, even before I knew about Rosenow. And so I was looking into this procedure of re-injecting your own blood intramuscularly, found that there were about 1,000 articles written on the subject, have indexed those articles, excerpts from those articles, and then have several sections here, how that relates to bloodletting, how that relates to bone marrow transplantation. Bone marrow transplantation is on its way to becoming autohemotherapy. If the trends continue in the direction it's going, within 5 years, most of bone marrow transplantation is going to be autologous for 5-10 years, and most of bone marrow transplantation is not going to use bone marrow. They're starting to use stem cells, and then there's a couple articles out more recently, and probably more since I've checked, that they don't really need to even separate the stem cells, use the whole blood. Okay, so then there's questions as you go intramuscular, intravenous. The traditional autohemotherapy was intramuscular, and I think they'll come back around to that. But we've tried to take a historical view here with this, and going and bloodletting. There had to be some explanation for bloodletting. I mean, it wouldn't have put Galen on top of medicine for more than a millennium if there wasn't something there, and Hippocrates and so on. So probably what happened, and undoubtedly somebody had epilepsy, and I see some kind of reports of this, and they had an accident, and they started to bleed, and they were cured of their epilepsy, and the people that were the medical, oh, okay, well, that's when they started ripping veins, that's where it came from. But at least to some extent, it looks like it is autohemotherapy. So, but we also have the modern literature, 1,000 articles that have been written in this within the last 100 years, and it's coming back around. I saw an article in one of the Journal of Integrative Medicine, or one of the journal, not your journal, but another one of the same, a recent alternative medicine magazine, and they're talking about autohemotherapy for herpes zoster, where it's famous for herpes zoster. It's very, very useful, very simple, very inexpensive, and very safe. I came across no instance of anybody suffering unduly from the injection of intramuscularly of auto blood. So I was looking into autohemotherapy, and I thought at first, before I found the whole discipline, that it must be some type of a vaccine. And while I was looking into autogenous vaccines, I saw Dr. Rosenow getting credit for something I thought Sir Almond Wright should have gotten credit for, the perfection of autogenous vaccines. Here's an article written in 1915 that's praising, that says, Koch, Ehrlich, and Rosenow. Who's Rosenow? He says, Rosenow perfected autogenous vaccines. In 1915, Sir Almond Wright was right at the peak of his game, and with no mention of him at all in this article. So I first went to look to Rosenow, and thinking, I already looked at Sir Almond Wright, and I saw the wonderful things he was doing with autogenous vaccines, and I saw myself initially as, well, I'm going to defend Sir Almroth Wright. And who is this upstart Rosenow? And I now think that he's probably one of the greatest medical people that's ever lived, and perhaps the greatest medical person since Hippocrates, or maybe even before. Because 30 years with the Mayo Foundation, he used the same culture medium he kept working until 1958. By the way, his work is correlated with all types of diseases, nervous system diseases, anything that you think of that is a mysterious disease. Dr. Rosenow, pretty much myasthenia gravis, multiple sclerosis is a notorious case, right? Multiple sclerosis is commonly linked to optic neuritis, okay? And that's, everybody kind of sees that. Optic neuritis, if you look into the literature, it's oral focus is kind of plausible in optic neuritis, but you don't very often see the connection between oral focus and multiple sclerosis. Rosenow made the direct connection, but even the indirect connection is very prominent in the literature. You can look it up, connect with oral focus and optic neuritis, and then look at optic neuritis and multiple sclerosis. And so we tie together. Anyway, Rosenow dealt with all of these diseases. And one of the most interesting ones that I spoke to Scott Rosenow about, and I asked him, and he remembered it too, is that accidentally, in a study in a prison population, and this is one of the most fascinating things, is that he was studying influenza. And these other diseases like influenza, where the range, all of a sudden, you have a nest, you have something going on all of a sudden, and all of a sudden, the particular strain that comes in, the strains that are normal residents in the body and in these oral foci will take on the virility of one of these rampaging diseases, and you get a bunch of people getting these diseases. But there seems to be some relation to the oral focus here. In the case of poliomyelitis, it's primarily the tonsils, and the tonsils were notoriously infected in those cases. So anyway, this one study here, he was doing in a prison population. It was looking at influenza, and they looked at the profile on neurotropic diseases versus pneumotropic disease and so on. And it was a real curious profile that showed up in the case of some of the violent criminals, where they showed a very strong neurotropic profile. And so Rosenow and his cousin, I believe his name was Oswald, and this was E.C. Rosenow III's father, they conducted a specific study with this prison population, comparing the violent criminals to the others, and also doing profiles of the seasonality, because criminality tends to be seasonality, and they found that the streptococcal form, that they could actually grow this streptococcus, and the laboratory animals that were injected with this streptococcus became very violent. It's some real dramatic work here. So I've pinched myself several times with Rosenow's work, saying, well, is this for real, and so on. And I think, it really helps to be studying somebody that was with the Mayo Foundation for 3 decades, because I said, well, I got to believe that there's something there. And so that has really, Dr. Weiner has mentioned, staying with something. Well, you don't stay with something unless you really believe in it. And I have a certain amount of faith in the Mayo Foundation that they're not going to keep somebody around for 3 decades that doesn't really have their stuff together. And it's been incredible. I didn't look at it. I kind of at times I've hated Rosenow. I wished I'd never met him through the writings, but he was a very good scientist, and I feel very, very pleased that I'm able to present his work to you here. Please.
Okay, you mentioned your own personal health situation that got you into it as well.
Oh, I was going to expand on how I found Rosenow. My health is very good, but I had the root canal teeth done. So my father died at an age 2 years younger than I am of coronary heart disease. When he was 44, he had terrible stomach ulcers, had 3/4 of his stomach cut out, and was not expected to survive. He survived for another 9 years, and I got to spend a little time with him before he went in for a double bypass operation, which was supposed to be a real easy operation. The operation was a success, but the patient died. But before he went in, he gave me a real important philosophy about life, about how he really intended to go on and live to be an old age, and he was about to retire. But that he said that if he didn't, that he wanted me to know that he had had such a wonderful bonus of these last 9 years, had been just a tremendous bonus, that every day was a bonus. And I've tried to live my life that way. This has been a great inspiration to me. But what really got me tied in a personal sense as well is that as I started to read Dr. Rosenow, I saw that all his writing about these things that, and I had all these root canals and all these teeth. I said, wait, is he talking about me? I said, no, let me concentrate on his vaccines, and that tends to be the first inclination is when I speak to people. I think even the Rosenows, and I'm a little concerned about this, is that everybody wants to make the vaccines. And the vaccines are wonderful, and we need to do that. But that's treating the symptoms. We need to get rid of the cause, and the cause is the oral focus. And this is what Dr. Rosenow proved. And so I was looking at it from a general standpoint of generally looking for these diseases. But specifically, I have varicose veins in one of my legs that are pretty bad. My mom saw them. She said, oh, they look just like your dad. So that kind of convinces me that I have the predisposition to coronary heart disease and stomach ulcers and these other things because it's something circulating through. Now, I haven't seen many people speak about varicose veins as one of these conditions, but Fisher does. In his book, Death and Dentistry, Fisher does mention varicose veins, and it's a circulatory thing, all these mysterious things. So that's the only outwardly symptom that I have is varicose veins. But I have been, because of this, I started doing autohemotherapy on myself. I've gotten a doctor to instruct me on it because I couldn't really afford to be going into a doctor every week and having it done, but I felt that in the absence of Dr. Rosenau's vaccines, that the best thing that I can do to keep these processes at bay within myself would be autohemotherapy. So the general procedure with that has been to do autohemotherapy on a bi-weekly basis, weekly or bi-weekly. I found an old dermatologist that was still practicing, and if you find somebody that was educated before World War II, they'll be familiar with autohemotherapy. And Dr. What your name again? Dr. Wright is familiar with autohemotherapy and uses it. Yes. I sent a fax to the, and I wasn't sure how to do this, and somebody was urged me to do it. I didn't want to get too involved politically, but we want to do what's right. I sent this news release that you have, and a press release and a notice, which was a one-page cover sheet, to the AAE the day before I left Santa Monica. I faxed it. And so I feel like I'm now on record at least having notified them. And I sent a nice note to them. And the gist of the note was that, we have all been taken in by this fraud. We have to get these facts out that that the fraud, the primary, one of the most prominent, the victims of this fraud were the early members of dentistry and the American Association of Endodontics, and I've offered to the AAE to work with them to try to get any and all of this information out. And I said that I thought that they were the proper organization because their members are concerned with what is involved in the teeth, inside the teeth, as well as these systemic diseases, that it would be appropriate for them to take the initiative and lead both dentistry and medicine to revisit these circumstances that have been clouded by Holman's fraud. So, I'm sorry? Well, I don't know. I think it's going to happen. There's no way around it. And there is both. There is an opportunity here, and there's a responsibility of endodontists to get involved with this, because who has the tools, who has the mandate to go into the mouth and to deal with this situation? We have a group of very well-trained, dedicated, professional people here who are interested in people's well-being, and it just, unfortunately, some of the procedures that they've been educated on, the science is not there, but they are the ideal people to get involved in correcting the situation, which is, unfortunately, the only way to correct it is surgical. It's cavitation surgery. But at some point, the American Association of Endodontists has to get involved, and there is a golden opportunity and if any of you have people, know people that are tied in with the AAE, I think there is a wonderful opportunity, and I really mean this, not just to lead dentistry, but to lead medicine into the new millennium, because these are facts. I'm not, and I mentioned in the letter, I said, I don't have a vendetta against dentistry. I don't have a vendetta against endodontics. This is history, pure and simple. That's all it is. So I can't do it. I'm not going to go and operate in somebody's mouth. I mean, I'm just, I'm incompetent when it comes to that kind of thing. I can't even, change a spark plug in my car. But I hope that they do see here an opportunity, because these are the people that really have to make the revolution happen. And it's endodontics, endodontics, they can become the real heroes of medicine and dentistry. Please.
Okay, next and last question is, those of us that are involved in integrative biological medicine, those of us that know about this work and are studying this work and certainly believe in it, those of us that are doing these kinds of procedures out there daily, out there in the trenches, what kind of protection do we have legally, and do we have enough information together here that we can give this to a competent attorney and yourself come in and defend us?
Do what I can. I don't know. Take a look at it. You've got the earlier book. It's basically there. I'll sit down with with legal staff, and we'll consult on this and do that. I'm hopeful to not get a totally negative response from the AAE. But I don't know. I think the facts of Holman's fraud, I mean, that's, you can't get away from that. So I don't know how much more we need. I can't answer that. I'm not a lawyer. But all I can do is say that I will cooperate to my fullest capabilities. Sir? The cause of most of these mysterious diseases is oral foci, organism growing in and around diseased teeth, secondarily tonsils. And he specifically took the organism from people with a wide range of diseases from their oral focus, using his culture methodology, which had oxygen gradients from 0 up, and was able to extract the organism, inject it into laboratory animals, and cause the same diseases in laboratory animals. So we're talking about all of the autoimmune diseases. We're talking about just a wide range of diseases that have this nest in the oral focus. Now I have nicer blue eyes than Jack Benny, and I'm the same age he was for all of his life too. Their prescription. I'll take them off. Their prescription. I have some other ones, but they're real strong. I use them for driving, and they give me a headache. I can see a little better with these. Price introduced Dr. Rosenow. They were very close. They were good friends. They were associates. In 1940, Weston Price introduced Dr. Rosenow at the dental centenary celebration and talked about his work. There was Weston Price. Coolidge was there, who was Dr. Meinig's teacher, and Goldstein. And Goldstein opened it up, and then Dr. Price gave a bit of a talk talking about how the diet, how it's basically all these native tribes, they had perfect teeth and they didn't have systemic disease. The white man came in, put in his little trading post. People's teeth got bad and they all came down with these diseases. Weston Price was a close associate of Dr. Rosenow's. And if you read Dr. Meinig's book, Root Canal Cover-Up, you'll see that Weston Price acknowledged that Rosenow was the guy that really kicked it off and did the definitive work. So they were associates. Price was the key guy on the dental side. Yeah, no, Dr. Rosenow didn't address that. I've seen reference to that. I can't comment on it. Just the infection itself is enough to be specific. The infection from whatever teeth with people with a specific disease cultured properly was able to cause the disease in laboratory animals, regardless of the tooth. He didn't address that at all. So they were not correlated, not in his work. Other people I know have attempted to do so. I don't know. I can't really comment on. Some people feel that there's placed quite a bit of credence in that. I'm not knowledgeable of it, so I'm not saying either way. But that Dr. Rosenow's work did not refer to that in any way at any time. Please.